Hey everybody, welcome to Seaside Quilting Supplies Tutorials. My name is Barb, and today we're going to work on a beautiful little quick wall hanging project called a snow globe quilt. So you can either hang it on the wall or you can turn it into a little table mat, but that's going to be our project today. Our kits are available on our website, www.seasidequiltingsupplies.com. Be sure to go there and grab one of any of our fantastic kits. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we've already cut our fabrics out to the what the instructions say. Our first step is going to be to take our corner squares, which are 2.5-inch squares, and we're going to place them in the corners of one of our focal squares. So these were cut to the dimensions specified in the pattern, and you do need to get the kit from us to get the specific measuring instructions. So we're going to place a square in the pattern that comes with this kit. They use different fabrics. I chose a fabric that we loved, so my coordinating fabrics are a slightly different color. So I'm going to choose one of my green 2.5-inch squares, and I'm going to place it in the corner of my 7.5-inch block. I have trimmed this block to the measurements the pattern calls for, with the seam centered in the block. Okay, so gonna place a square in the corner, and hang on, I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, here we are back at the table. So we're going to put a square, as I said before, in each corner of our block that has our little seam centered on it. We're going to put them right sides together, one in each corner. And then we're going to take our ruler and our chalk pencil, if I can find mine, or whatever kind of marking pen you like. This is a little bit dark, so I'm going to use the just a chalk pencil, and we're going to mark from corner to corner, and we're going to go from the top edge of the square, so the top edge to the left edge. So we're going to start at the top point, and we're going to make ourselves a diagonal line going to the left edge, and then we're going to do the opposite on this side. We're going to start at the top and we're going to go to the right side, and we're just going to make a diagonal line from point to point. Okay, and then so that's the top edge. Then I'm just going to turn it for you, and we're going to go to the bottom squares. And on the bottom, we're going to do left edge to bottom. And we're going to make a diagonal line. And on the last square, we're going to go, I turned too many times, you guys. We're going to go left edge to the bottom. You make sure you're careful when you're positioning your diagonal lines, because you don't want to, if you sew it the wrong way, it's obviously not going to open up for you. Okay. Then I'm going to hop over to the machine. I'm going to sew on the diagonal line. I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are back at the machine. We've stitched our diagonal on each corner, and now we're going to we're going to turn our corners out, fold them back, and give them a press. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to give this a little finger press. I'm pressing on my wool mat. I need to get you guys some more of these. I will tell you, if you have not gotten one of these wrist magnets, they are the bomb. They are just crazy. I just love them. For some reason, they are so much easier than sticking a pin in. All right, so we're folding these corners back, and we're going to give them a press, get them nice and flat. All right, so there we go. We have our corners folded back. Corners are folded back. And now the next thing we're going to do is take our piece of our the base, the wood base, and we're going to do the same thing to that we just did to the corners. We're going to put a square in each side. I'm going to try to not cut my head off there. We're going to put a square in each side, and we're going to mark just like we did. We're going to mark from the top to the far corner, to the left corner, and we're going to mark from the top out to the right corner. Okay. Then we're going to sew on that line and fold these up. Be right back. Okay, just as we did with our corners on our focal, we're going to fold back our corners on our base. This is our little wood base. Now we're going to pin this to our main square. Look at my handy little. So, you know, guys, I'm a big fan of clips, love clips. But when I want my points to be good, I want to pin, because I want to get those points right where they need to be. And I'm going to pin right there at the point, because I want my points to be good. I don't mind if you don't, but it's one of those things with me. I lost a lot of points on my Christmas tree top because I was sewing too fast, and I didn't take my time to match my points up really good, so I was very disappointed in my work on that. So, all right, so I think I have my points pretty well lined up, and I have a pin at each one, and now I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance right there, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. Here's our first block. So you can see how the wood makes the base of our snow globe, and how our points are pretty good right there. That one's a smidge off, but not enough that it bothered me. Okay, so one of the things I do when I'm wanting to get these points right is, after I lay my fabrics on top of each other and I pin where I want the points to be really sharp, I will set my stitch length to 6 and do a basting stitch across there, because that pulls out easily, and then I'll flip it and see if I have my points just right. And that way I don't have to get the seam ripper out. I can just, you know, pull a thread and get the basting stitch out and adjust as I need to. So then I'll run over that with my stitch length sets at shorter. And I usually set it somewhere between 2 and 2.5 or whatever I'm working on. This one I set it 2. Okay, so this is our block. And I'm going to finish the other 2, and then we'll talk about what to do after that. I'll be right back. Okay, here we are. We've got our 4 blocks all done. You're going to need to square them up to whatever the instructions tell you to. And next we're going to do our little sashing part right here. See this part? We're going to do this part right here. So the fabric's blue in here. We didn't use that fabric, so we're going to do our longer strip and one of our little squares, and we're going to just lay these out so we know what we're doing. And so we're going to lay them out like this. Then we're going to sew them together, and then we will add them to our block. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we're going to sew our blocks together in rows with the sashing, and I've still got to add that. So our blocks together with sashing, and then we're going to sew our little sashing top strips together with the little red in between. And we're going to make each of these in a row. So we're going to make this just like it is. We're going to make these. We'll have 2 of these units, and then and we will have 3 of this unit. Then we're going to attach these to each other. So first make your little rows with your blocks and their green sashing, and then make your sashing rows before we try to put it all together. Okay, I'll be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back to Seaside Quilting Supplies. So now we have our 2 block units, and we have these with our sashing on the ends and the sashing in the middle to sew them together. So we have our 2 block units, and we have our horizontal sashing strips all done. So now what we're going to do is attach our horizontal strips to our block units, and we're going to want to make sure when we're doing this that we have our seams nice and lined up. So I got my handy dandy little wrist pin magnet on, and I need some glasses, of course. So we just want everything to be nice and lined up at the end. So we're going to put these right sides together. So this is one of our, let me get everything else out of the way here, you guys, so you can see better. All right, let's move all this stuff. Okay, so this is our block unit. This is our sashing strip. And I'm going to line up my seams so that when we flip this little sewn piece over, our vertical lines are nice and lined up. Now, you could do this with clips if you wanted. I told you yesterday I like to pin when I'm trying to get my seams and points really accurate. So I'm using my nice little bohine pins. You know I love bohine pins. I'm going to pin right on that seam because I want that to be really lined up when we flip this over. And then I'm going to move to the next seam unit, which is here in the middle. And we want our little red square to be right in the center. So I'm going to line those up. And you can feel when you're going through the seams, your pin's going to meet with a little more resistance. So I'm going to pin right there. And then I'm going to pin the one right next to it too, because I don't want them to shift or move or wiggle. I'm going to pin that seam. And then we just have the one at the end here, and line this one up. Okay, and then I'm going to sew a 1/4-inch seam on here. So that's the next step. Hey everybody, welcome back to Seaside Quilting Supplies. So now we have our 2 block units, and we have these with our sashing on the ends and the sashing in the middle to sew them together. So we have our 2 block units, and we have our horizontal sashing strips all done. So now what we're going to do is attach our horizontal strips to our block units, and we're going to want to make sure when we're doing this that we have our seams nice and lined up. So I got my handy dandy little wrist pin magnet on, and I need some glasses, of course. So we just want everything to be nice and lined up at the end. So we're going to put these right sides together. So this is one of our, let me get everything else out of the way here, you guys, so you can see better. All right, let's move all this stuff. Okay, so this is our block unit. This is our sashing strip. And I'm going to line up my seams so that when we flip this little sewn piece over, our vertical lines are nice and lined up. Now, you could do this with clips if you wanted. I told you yesterday I like to pin when I'm trying to get my seams and points really accurate. So I'm using my nice little bohine pins. You know I love bohine pins. I'm going to pin right on that seam because I want that to be really lined up when we flip this over. And then I'm going to move to the next seam unit, which is here in the middle. And we want our little red square to be right in the center. So I'm going to line those up. And you can feel when you're going through the seams, your pin's going to meet with a little more resistance. So I'm gonna pin right there. And then I'm gonna pin the one right next to it too, because I don't want them to shift or move or wiggle. Gonna pin that seam. And then we just have the one at the end here, and line this one up. Okay, and then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on here. So that's the next step. Hey everybody, welcome back to Seaside Quilting Supplies. So now we have our 2 block units, and we have these with our sashing on the ends and the sashing in the middle to sew them together. So we have our 2 block units, and we have our horizontal sashing strips all done. So now what we're going to do is attach our horizontal strips to our block units, and we're going to want to make sure when we're doing this that we have our seams nice and lined up. So I got my handy dandy little wrist pin magnet on, and I need some glasses, of course. So we just want everything to be nice and lined up at the end. So we're going to put these right sides together. So this is one of our, let me get everything else out of the way here, you guys, so you can see better. All right, let's move all this stuff. Okay, so this is our block unit. This is our sashing strip. And I'm going to line up my seams so that when we flip this little sewn piece over, our vertical lines are nice and lined up. Now, you could do this with clips if you wanted. I told you yesterday I like to pin when I'm trying to get my seams and points really accurate. So I'm using my nice little bohine pins. You know I love bohine pins. I'm going to pin right on that seam because I want that to be really lined up when we flip this over. And then I'm going to move to the next seam unit, which is here in the middle. And we want our little red square to be right in the center. So I'm going to line those up. And you can feel when you're going through the seams, your pin's going to meet with a little more resistance. So I'm going to pin right there. And then I'm going to pin the one right next to it too, because I don't want them to shift or move or wiggle. I'm going to pin that seam. And then we just have the one at the end here, and line this one up. Okay, and then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on here. So that's the next step. Hey everybody. Okay, so that was the next step, to sew a 1/4 inch seam and attach our sashing strips to our block units that we made. So here is our top without its borders yet, but with its sashings inserted, and all our little sashing squares line up. So you will notice that one thing I made sure I did when I was laying out where each block would be, I had 2 blocks that had kind of a red pop off of them. One was the truck and one was the large, one was the tractor. And I put them opposite each other so the quilt top, little wall hanging top, didn't feel lopsided and heavier on one side than the other, if that makes sense. So next we're going to add our little cream border accent, and then we'll do our outer borders, and we'll be getting there. Okay, so up next is our little cream first border or frame. It seems more like a frame to me. It's small. So you originally had a long strip of this, a full width of fabric strip. So you're going to cut it in half lengthwise so that you get 2 pieces out of it. And then we're going to put it on the edges of our quilt. We're going to do all 4 edges, and we're going to, of course, line up our raw edges here, and we're going to trim it so that we're at the exactly at the end at the bottom, or the bottom edge, or whichever end you start at. You want it to be even with the sides of your quilt. So let's do that. Okay, so the next part of our little project is we're going to put our frame, our skinny little cream piece, on the outer border. Now she does this a little differently. The red final outer excuse me, outer border is wider than the white piece. So the instructions say to either baste or pin your white cream, whatever it is, piece onto the edge of your quilt. And then you're going to take your red accent strip. I'm going to cheat, you guys. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to baste it down. I'm not going to pin it down. I'm going to lay this red piece on top of the white piece. And now your red pieces, you should have cut in half as well. So let me just give this a quick snip here at the halfway point. All right, so now I'm going to take this over to the machine right here carefully, and I'm going to make sure I'm catching the cream strip in my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Be right back. Okay, so here we are. We're going to attach our little cream strips. So you've cut them to the length of the size of your project, because you started with a full width of fabric strip, which was long. Okay, you're going to fold them in half lengthwise. I actually gave mine a press, and you're going to line up your raw edges. So this is where she says to either baste or pin this in place. I'm still not going to do that, you guys. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip that step, and I'm going to just be really careful when I put the red piece on. So then you take your red strip, which is wider, and you're going to put it on top of your cream strip. Now, I know what you're thinking. When you open this up, you're going to have the white strip's going to have a free folded edge. Yes, it is. It's going to give just a little bit of dimension, and we're going to quilt this thing at the end, so it'll tack that down. But it helps give the picture a little bit of dimension, so it makes a really interesting feature. So a couple of pointers about this. Please feel free to pin it or baste it or whatever you want to do. If you want to baste your white strip down, go ahead. If you're new to sewing, it's highly do that. It's a great thing. It's a great habit to get into. I'm going to skip that step. I'm going to put my needle in the needle down position for when I stop, so that my little project will be held in place. And I'm just going to line them up carefully, and I'm going to sew gently, and I'm going to stop every few inches and make sure I have all my pieces on the edge so that I'm catching what I need to catch in my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm at the machine. I don't know, you guys probably can't see me, but I just wanted to do this with you a little bit. So I have all 3 pieces under the needle, and I immediately put the needle in the needle down position so it's holding it in place. So I'm going to just move, oops, I forgot to take off my basting stitch from before. I'll fix that in a minute. So I'm going to just move a few inches, and then I'm going to make sure that everything is lined up, and you guys probably can't see that. I should move the camera. Hang on. So I wanted to show you that I have all of these lined up on the edge of the fabric. So here's our top. This is the little white frame strip. It's lined up on the raw edge, and then I put the red strip on top of that, and I have my needle in the needle down position, and I'm going to just sew a bit. With my 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to stop and make sure everything's nice and straight, and I'm going to make sure my little frame piece is on the raw edge, and then I'm going to catch it in my red strip. And I'm pretty sure I am, so I'm going to go ahead and sew another part of that. I just wanted you to see that I was catching all of that. Okay, so here we are. We've caught the little frame with our red outer border, and I'm going to show you now. You're going to press this open. So let me move the camera down a bit. So here we are. This is our top. This is the little white piece we had, and this is our red outer border. And we want to press all of this open. So I'm going to use my trusty flatter, which you guys know I love. Give it a little squirt. And then I've already turned my seam allowance under. And I want to just press this nice and flat and open. So I'm going to put this on here. It's my little trusty Aliso small iron. I don't have my big irons over at where Mary and I press during the day for cutting and things. So we're going to give this a nice press open and get it nice and flat. So then we will have done, and I'll show you in a second, the sides of the quilt now have their frame and their outer border. And then we're just going to do the same exact procedure on the top and the bottom, and then we're going to be ready to layer our quilt. Top, wall hanging, table mat, whatever you want to turn it into. It's not really quilt size, it's wall hanging or table mat size. But you see how I was telling you earlier, this white piece, it's folded edges free. So it's up here, it gives a little bit of sense of dimension. And when you quilt it, it's gonna get tacked down anyway, but it gives it a little bit of depth that you wouldn't normally get out of that. I think it's a cute way to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna finish the top and the bottom, and we'll be back for layering. Hey everybody. Okay, so here we are with our final pieces of our top all together. All we have to do now is pick a backing and a batting and layer it and quilt it. And I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to include it as part of this video. We'll just do it in a little separate one. One thing I do want to tell you about this is I think that I made a mistake reading her pattern. So let me just tell you. In the pattern it says fold the cream strips in half lengthwise around to all four sides. Now, initially I read that as the strips needed to be cut to fit the length of each side, but you'll see then I ended up with a little piece that I had to trim here before I could put the red piece on. So I think what she meant to say was keep your pieces long, but she never says sew them together. Gotta say, this pattern needs a little work. Anyway, I think she meant to keep them continuous, at least not to cut each piece. And then when you got to the corner, miter it and fold it in place. I cut them, which meant I had to turn under a little bit here on this edge so I didn't have a raw edge out in the open. Now I think that worked fine. If you want to leave the white strips continuous, you'll go around one side and then around the other. And you'll have to do a little mitered fold there on your corner. I think that's fine too. I'm going to put some notes in the pattern. I'm going to put a note at least on each pattern about that, and you can remember to watch the video if you get stuck. But I was perfectly happy with the way the white came out. Here we're going to quilt over it anyway. So, all right, so that's our cute little snow globe. I think it turned out super, super cute, you guys. I will layer it and quilt it and show you guys what I did with that in the end. And then, of course, you'll just have to put your binding on. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this little cutie patootie. It was super easy. If I had been sewing continuously, I could have probably done it in, I think an hour, maybe. I think an hour you could do this. All right, so thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to get your kit for the snow globe at www.seasidequiltingsupplies.com. We'll be back with another tutorial soon. Thanks, guys. Go sew some love.